For every age, there is a time of trial. The rocks faced such a fire before they were the strength beneath our feet. The plants braved vast winds before their roots could give us life. As a sage of considerable years, I have known only one such great ordeal. Yet the hero it created was a champion for all time. Today's the big day.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Why did we sign up for this?
Just shut your whiny traps and keep moving. This way. It's a medical! Shoot it! Shoot it!
Jak II. Wow, I can't believe it's been 20 years. What a product of its time. The sequel to the widely successful Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy, developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. In today's very special documentary deep dive video, we'll be taking a look at every facet of Jak II. This includes my thoughts on the game, this includes the development of the game, this includes the release of the game, the reception of the game, the current state of the game, and so much more. So please, join me in my very special 20-year celebration of my favorite video game of all time. This is 20 years of Jak II.
Jak II is as different from Jak I as Jak I was from Crash 3. Jak speaks, he has personality. Jak now is a character as opposed to a poster cutout.
But how long can that deal last?
Jak II really, for us, has a significant amount of buzz internally, and we're really, really excited to be finally able to show it to everybody.
Here we have the evolution of what became Final Jak. Here we start seeing the Jak that we're more used to. His hair got a bit more weighted down. We still wanted to keep it long. Actually, we tried the buzz cut here. We tried various other looks, the locks on the side, the facial hair still is kind of sticking around. We kind of like this kind of look as well with the Rebel look and the old headgear and a bit added on. So we can see that Jak's been through some combat. He's beefed up and he's ready to go.
The reason the animation looks more sophisticated this time around is because there's been some tweaks to the engine. We're also just being a lot more clever about the way we allocate memory and design our levels. The most visible difference in the cutscenes is that our characters now have upwards of 10,000, 12,000 polys in them, whereas in the first game, the original Jak and Daxter, the characters would have maybe 2 or 3. The bottom line is what we are doing now in real time on the PlayStation 2 took an entire room full of computers hours to do as little as 5 years ago.
We have a much greater amount of detail in the new game. We have single locations on our game that have larger polygon counts, equal polygon counts to some of the entire levels in the original game.
What's great about working with Naughty Dog is these guys are not happy just to have their game look as good as their previous game. They want to set a new standard for animation or artwork or programming on every single game that they do.
We're always trying to push the envelope on both on a technical and artistic scale.
Jak II is really a landmark title for Naughty Dog. We're really trying to create a cinematic feel that will set the new standard that other games will try to emulate, and that has more levels and different enemies. We wanted to change the player's experience, give them something that they hadn't had before, while still retaining the feel of Jak and Daxter.
That's right. Don't mess with the sugar.
In Jak II, we were able to build upon what we had created before and go in all new kinds of directions and create things that would not have been possible with the original engine because we had such a great starting point to work with.
We wanted to really up the ante in a number of different realms. First of all, we want to put a lot more things on screen, enemies that were attacking you, things moving around, so the player had the real feeling of being in an inhabited world instead of just a pretty world, and that adds a lot more options in terms of gameplay.
Let me handle this, Jak. Watch my finesse and style.
This story is a much more complex story than the original Jak and Daxter. We're exploring a large number of more adult themes. There's bigger, greater evils around you, and there's betrayal and love. This is not just a kid's story. This is a story with a much broader reach.
Jak has really done a lot of growing up this game. The plot actually starts out with him spending some time in jail, and he becomes hardened, and when he emerges, he's definitely changed.
We're not doing anything until you tell us why metalheads are trading with the Baron's forces.
I should have had you both kneecapped, eh?
We knew what kind of character he was going into the first Jak and Daxter, but now we really have the opportunity to really develop his persona and his character. There is a very volatile element to this universe, which is the dark eco, and now we start to see how that's affecting Jak.
In 2001, we were designing a character that we hoped would be older than a Crash Bandicoot character, but we still wanted to keep him young. This is a different Jak. He goes to prison. He's angry.
I want information. Where the hell am I?
Jak is definitely not the character action game hero of the past. But it's more than just changing Jak. Everything in the game has changed. You'll look at this and you say it's still a cartoon. But if you look at, for example, how we would do a warrior in Jak I and how we do a warrior in Jak II, you can see that there's a great deal of difference in just the seriousness and the realistic proportions and things between the two characters.
So, who or what do we have to shake down, knock out, or blow up?
We went through tons of voices for the voice of Jak and found a guy named Mike Irwin, who actually plays the young Bruce Banner in the Hulk movie that's coming out very shortly. And I think we really picked something unique for Jak. He has a youth, but at the same time he has a maturity, and hopefully that voice will work for him across 8-year-olds to 80-year-olds.
It took us a long time to find the right voice for Jak. But Mike Irwin, I mean, if there is a person in the real world that is Jak, it's Mike Irwin.
We've done what you've asked. Now when do we see the shadow?
Max Casella has returned to reprise the role as Daxter, and he is just a goldmine for us.
This could have a serious impact on the lady factor.
He's a bit grown up now because he's now in the big city, and there's a lot of big city vices for him to experiment with.
Hot. And wait, I've seen you before.
Shh, I'm Tess. Play along, and I may be able to get my hands on a few secrets.
Ooh, I love undercover work, baby.
We were always just thinking that basically the abuse of Daxter is the fun of this game.
Something's happening to me. Something he did.
Jak has all of the original moves he had in the last game, which was a pretty large set of moves. And on top of that, he earns, as he goes through the game, a morphing gun that goes through these 4 basic setups, each of which is upgradable in various capacities. Jak also has a hoverboard that he earns, that he can use at any time. You can actually think through things in different ways. You can say, I can do this on foot with the gun, or I could use my fists, or I could use the hoverboard. Or I can use Dark Jak, which is a kind of morphing change that Jak will go into. It's a little bit akin to Wolverine when he gets excited, a little bit like the Hulk without the bulk. The backgrounds in Jak II are a little less colorful, a little more murky, a little darker. The world is a little darker. Things have happened in this world that don't tend to happen in character action platform games. It's a very different look. It's very Miyazaki. It's very classic Japanese, more mature anime and manga look. But it's at the same time a very different look for the character action platform, and I'm really excited about that. For the first time with Jak II, we've had a change of heart on the music, and we've gone from what used to be just straight looping, spooling music into an interactive soundtrack. And the track actually changes based on how many creatures are around you, whether or not you have the hoverboard out, whether or not you're using the gun, whether or not you're in a really tight situation, if there's a time challenge or anything like that. The music actually changes as you're going through the game.
Word is you're out to join the fight for the city.
The city's kind of a central role in this game. It's an absolutely massive area. It's 24 times the size of the biggest Jak I area. It's taken 2 people a little bit over a year and a half to complete by the time it's done, modeling full time. It has to be the largest, densest area ever modeled for a game. It has to be, because it's absolutely massive.
If we don't get the kid back on the throne soon, there may not be a city left to defend.
Jak II is really the culmination from a character action standpoint of getting plot into a game. What we used to do, which was create levels and then create a story that went around the levels. Oh, well, why are you doing this? I don't know, come up with some excuse. We've started with a story and then created levels that fit the story. So story really is the primary driving force in Jak II.
We're going to be talking about the mass market today, and I agreed to do this talk 6-8 months ago, maybe a year ago, and at that time Naughty Dog was sitting at the top of the world. We had just done absolutely incredibly, but the market has changed. So this is a very interesting talk for me because I was so excited to get up there and be like, yeah, Naughty Dog, we killed everybody, we know everything, but now kind of we've had the world has come to us and said, hey, you don't know everything. So it's going to be an interesting talk for me today, and I'm really happy to be able to share some of my ideas of what we did wrong. actually, with Jak and Daxter. Why me? Why me talking about mass market? Why Naughty Dog? Why Jason Rubin? First of all, we did Crash Bandicoot, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with Crash Bandicoot. Just to hit some of the highlights, 23 million units for those 4 titles, so we're averaging somewhere right just under 6 million copies per title. That's pretty good sales. 4 of the top 8 sellers, and I put them in order. So Crash 1 was number 6, Crash 2 was number 2. So the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 8th best-selling PlayStation titles are Crash titles, which is a pretty impressive showing, and I'm very, very proud of that. I would say it's pretty safe to say, and I usually say controversial things, so I'm glad to be able to say something easy. Crash reached the mass market last generation. I think that's definite. As Ted said, we just did Jak and Daxter, which is a game that came out in December. It was a later launch than we usually do. It came out at the beginning of December. It's the first new next-generation hardware mascot, and I throw so many little modifiers in there, it's almost meaningless. But what I mean by that is, this is a character from a hardware manufacturer, Sony, put out on their system exclusively with a large marketing budget and with everything that should make it the next Sonic, the next Mario, the next Crash. It's not a mascot, but it's the kind of character that should have been absolutely huge and I should have been able to stand up here and say, we did it again. We defined the mass market. We are the ones that sold more than anybody else, and we're the number 1, number 2, number 3 best-selling title. It didn't happen that way. Our peer reception has been great. We were up for 3 awards, better than the Crash Bandicoots, but it didn't sell because that market shifted on us. And maybe it was actually a good investment, because maybe the market will shift again, and by the time a sequel might come out, we may be back in that younger audience. But for right now, Jak and Daxter was not the right game. Simply not the right game for the market.
When we set out to do Jak II, we really wanted to improve on the groundwork that we laid with Jak and Daxter 1. We had spent a lot of time developing the technology, which I think was really well received, and we really sort of set a new graphical, visual standard that games are trying to chase. And so now that we have that in place, we're able to focus our efforts on sort of evolving the gameplay and creating a different experience that people haven't really had before.
There was this real question of what we do with Jak II, because with the original Jak and Daxter we had great technology and a very high level of polish on the game, but there were some doubts as to whether or not we'd really hit the sweet spot as far as the modern video game consumer goes. So the challenge with Jak II was then, what can we do on a core gameplay level and a story and characterization level to maybe grab a few consumers we might have missed the first time around?
We really wanted to reach out and get those players, so we sort of stepped it up, and we're making a T-rated game for the first time in Naughty Dog's history since Way of the Warrior. So we're really, I think, upping the content to try to reach those individuals who want a more mature gaming experience.
The technical side of things are very similar to the original game. All the original controls of the game are present here, with more developed on top. This includes the Morph Gun weapon mods, including the Scattergun mod, the Blaster mod, the Vulcan Fury mod, and the Peacemaker mod. On top of this, we are given a jetboard to play around with, as well as Dark Jak, a new eco form. Jak II and the franchise as a whole is quite a hodgepodge mix of many different things, resulting in something unique altogether. Take Tony Hawk Pro Skater, The Incredible Hulk, and Grand Theft Auto. These are all present influences in the things I've just mentioned, if not more derivative than that. This derivative nature is kind of what makes Jak and Daxter games great. They innovate on top of their derivative implementation. Still present here are the in-engine rendered cutscenes, but this time we are treated to a separate set of character models exclusive for the cutscenes. This game also includes the pseudo-open world structure from the first game. The game is split into sections with loading zones, meaning there are no loading screens present in the game. Some of this incredible stuff has all been made possible by Naughty Dog's Goal engine, which has now been decompiled by some dedicated fans for the PC, meaning you can now play Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy and an early version of Jak II on PC. Following the success of Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy, Naughty Dog at some point between the two games held some focus groups. I believe these focus groups consisted of about 8 to 10-year-olds playing the original Jak and Daxter. However, it is also possible they were playing an early version of Jak II. These focus groups reportedly didn't go well, in Jason Rubin's own words.
All right. Parents go out and they buy E-games, they buy E-games, they buy E-games. They want their kids to play E-games, and they see a T game on the shelf. All right, and well, let me step back for a second. The challenge of obtaining an E rating, it's almost impossible. Jak and Daxter was almost a T because it has a spider, and when you shoot the magical, mystical stuff at the spider, his legs pop off and there's some purple smoke, and that made it a T. So we had to really beg to get back to that E rating. The challenge of obtaining an E rating and shooting for a broader audience pushes even the parent-friendly developer towards a T, because you do anything that's kind of cool and you're a T.
And there was just this heyday of the character action game owning everything. And Crash fell directly into that, and the expansion onto CD, graphics getting better. It was like the perfect moment. With Jak and Daxter, we were expanding that into, you know, something a little deeper, something a little longer. And Jak came out to great reception, and just as its sales curve started kind of spiking up, and as the Crash of the day, which we didn't do, was coming down, it launched better because it had the name Crash, but the game kind of wasn't good and went down. We were spiking up. This Grand Theft Auto 3 thing came out and utterly changed the expectations of the gaming community. And like literally overnight, everything changed. We had already started working on Jak II, and I remember doing a focus group and 2 8-year-olds were in this focus group. And I was like, so what do you think? And they acted like 16-year-olds, like 8-year-olds. Well, the graphics are good, and we really like the gameplay. We like what you're doing and the expansion of the universe. Really, this would be a fantastic game for our little brothers. And you're like, you're 8. What are you playing? Grand Theft Auto. And it just changed everything.
Focus groups changed everything.
Well, but it taught you that, you know, the expectations of the world were different. So I remember going to Shuhei at Sony and saying, Shu, I don't know that we're doing the right thing here. Maybe we should do an adult character. Maybe we should do a character action game based on, you know, something that's a little more mature. And he said, I love Jak and Daxter. Do you love Jak and Daxter? Of course I love Jak and Daxter. Do you think we can do more with Jak and Daxter? Of course we can do more with Jak and Daxter. Well, let's continue the series. And that's why, if you look, Jak II he had a gun. He kind of cursed. Like, he did all the things that we were like trying to grab onto as much of the world as we could. And then over time, it just became obvious that the right thing to do next was something more like Uncharted and something less like fruity character.
So you were ready to do Uncharted right after Jak, or right in the middle of Jak II.
It wouldn't have been Uncharted, to be clear. It would have been something utterly different. But we were ready to attack the adult human character with guns or, you know, with an attitude, as opposed to the fuzzy, happy, friendly creatures that at that time had kind of been the past. And now you ask what today's character. I think we've gotten to the point where people are like, okay, I get it. You can kill things in all kinds of ways, and there's probably a space for these games to come back and be just fun, because they are.
Yeah, I think there is that thing of like exploring how far we can go or what we can do, or can these things be, they can definitely be adult now. I think pretty much we've explored content that goes as far as you can.
It's no longer novel, certainly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, adult
well, now I think this is novel.
This is novel and kitschy in many ways.
So we're going to play both Crash today, and later on we'll play Jak.
So the team decided it may be time to shelve Jak and Daxter away and look forward into a more mature IP. However, with input from Sony and Interactive Entertainment, as well as Mark Cerny himself, they were convinced to continue the franchise, but overcome the hurdles they knew they faced, with Grand Theft Auto 3 shaking the industry overnight. It wasn't only Naughty Dog who felt the pressure, as many other companies were also shifting their titles. In fact, I don't think it's any coincidence that Ratchet & Clank suddenly became more of an action third-person shooter rather than a 3D platformer, and at the same time, Sly Cooper became less of a traditional Crash Bandicoot evolution and more of an open-world narrative-driven, mission-based action platforming game. This is a very important point, as these were Sony's 3 main company-facing platformer titles at the time. So Jak shifted focus. Jak shifted focus. Naughty Dog knew they wanted to create a more narrative-driven experience. They had the world and lore down already. That was easy. And this was where I think a lot of people who talk about Jak II here on YouTube get it all wrong nowadays. You see a lot of people who criticize the series having You see a lot of people on the outside today criticize the series for having a quote-unquote identity crisis. But they never really touch upon the fact that the Jak and Daxter franchise is rich with lore that was never dropped and was always consistent within the main trilogy. The world is rich with the same wonders and mystery. The world is rich with the same wonders and mysteries all the way through, despite the slight, and I do believe slight, we'll get into that later, shift in tone. Jak Jak II stayed true to the making both games feel like the same world, whereas Naughty Dog could have easily have gone the route of just transporting them into another dimension or something. But no, rather they have you think it's this first... Rather, they have you think this is the first act of the game, and then they tie it all up with a clever time travel story. The thing is, right, there's consequences that have been caused by the player by entering this world and deciding to go into the Rift Rider. There are consequences by the end of the story that, in fact, influence the events of the first game. And I know I haven't touched on the tone, but the tone isn't that different from the first game. Yes, it is different, but it's still a T-rated game at its core, and Jak and Daxter, as stated here by Jason Rubin, was almost a T-rated game at its core anyway. The thing is, the games are very close in nature, but Jak II carries a different tone and revenge arc plot and energy with it, but at its core, there isn't much of an identity crisis happening here, I don't think. I had played Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy on my cousin's PlayStation 2 system. It was an amazing experience for my first real foray into video games. It was open, explorable, and populated. It was far more entertaining than my bicycle. Jak II was definitely something else though, and believe me, I smelled that new game smell for quite a while. I popped that disc into my console. It was a surreal fly-through camera shot of some grey populated city area, with some hover zoomers which I vaguely knew about from the first game. So I started a new game from the menu and I was greeted with a familiar voice. Same was the Sage, but this time with a far more ominous sentiment. For every age, there is a time of trial, warning the player that this time has come for us to experience. We are then greeted with a very familiar location for anybody that's played Precursor Legacy, Sandover Village. But quickly, as is one of the main themes of Jak II, things change. A couple of foreshadows later and the gang is thrust into a new mysterious world. As a first-time player coming off the Precursor Legacy, I must say the mystique was at an all-time high at this point, and the stakes never felt higher. Jak is imprisoned and experimented on for 2 years until Daxter saves him. Setting up the mystery some more is a line from a new character called Baron Praxis saying,
"I will not be remembered as the man who lost this city to those vile creatures! Move forward with a final plan! Finish off this thing tonight."
We cannot lose the city to those vile creatures. The game begins. I was shocked by this new world. It was so much more alive than the previous title. Movement is exactly the same as Precursor Legacy. At this point in the game, you have no new things on top of your old moveset. And Daxter teaches the player how to platform Jak II. This tutorial stage is set through none other than a prison escape sequence. Quite the tutorial. The feeling playing this game is quite unparalleled. One moment you're in a lively, bustling city, the next you are in a desolate wasteland ruin area, which later you find out is quite important, but that's for later. From here on out, the game just gets crazy, even at some points, recapturing that Precursor Legacy feeling in full. The world felt alive. There's a sprawling, bustling city that's full of life. Now don't make fun of me too hard here if you're quite young. This was astounding for 2003. Just take a look at some of the competition at the time. Furthermore, beyond the city the game provided many outside areas of the city, which felt desolate and quiet. This is such contrast, harkening back to the days of the Precursor Legacy. Haven Forest is just one of those areas that sort of perfectly encapsulate and recapture the Precursor Legacy vibes, right? Especially with the shot from the city from the high mountain point that you start at. Such a beautiful contrast to the city, especially some of this like scenery, waterfalls and butterfly life inside the forest. Strip mine. Something that sort of makes you want to fight for the city that's currently being overrun with this alien race, right? Like, this isn't the only life left in the city, right? Strip Mine, Dead Town, and Metalhead Nest, they all kind of capture the desperation feeling of the city and Jak's world as a whole against this Metalhead siege that is currently going on. The Fortress, Baron's Palace, the Dig and the Weapons Factory, these are all locations that capture the desperations and the divide between Haven's citizens and the Baron's fascist regime. It also the palace itself quite illustrates the class difference between the citizens and the Baron's KG and whatnot, especially the palace as presented in the Jak II prequel Daxter. Mars Tomb, Precursor Temple, Dead Town, and the Underport all capture the mystique of the Precursors, a huge theme that is still present within the trilogy. Plenty of people that have covered Jak II on YouTube have kind of stated that the world of Jak II, especially the city, feels empty, void of life. And while I think this might be true in, say, a modern 2023 viewpoint, I think it's fair to say that 20 years ago, this city was alive. At first you hear Errol tell Baron Praxis that his experiments have failed. His experiments being Jak, thus suggesting previous experiments before Jak. This, and the environment tells us this, the mechanisms moving the jail cells all throughout the roof of the complex. Jak II is at its core a revenge story in so many ways. The most obvious way is Jak's own personal revenge arc against Baron Praxis, but the whole game maintains this heavy revenge theme. This includes the Underground's revenge plot against Baron, who is run by Torn and Samos respectively. Alongside this, there are many revenge plots against the secondary cast members. This includes Sig's revenge plot against Crew, Core's revenge plot against the Baron, furthermore Ashland's revenge plot against her own father. This is the underlying theme of the story. However, it does go a bit deeper than that. With Naughty Dog's first real foray into cinematic story games, Jak II presented itself as a dark political war story. Maintaining this tone are the characters fighting for what they want and occasionally backstabbing another character. Now this doesn't seem like a big deal, right? I hear what you're saying, but I think it's most important to consider the time and the place of Jak II's release. Spoiler alert for any Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy and Jak II plots. So the game story is pretty interesting. It's, this is set after Jak, Daxter, Kier, Samos open a mysterious Precursor door at the secret ending of Precursor Legacy. Jak and Co somehow, in Daxter's own words, move their findings to Samos's pad, also Daxter's words. They activate the devices and are thrusted into a strange new world. As mentioned earlier, we are introduced to Praxis and Errol, and we get some sneak peek glances at some of the stakes in their story. Actually, this cutscene is so action-packed, it's crazy. We are introduced to Dark Jak, a new eco-form that allows Jak to harness some of his ultimate's powers. Calling back to the Precursor Legacy's villains, Gol and Maya. This is calling back to the Precursor Legacy's villains, Gol and Maya, quite nicely. We then go outside after we then escape the prison and meet Corin the Kid, who we protect, and he gives us some advice to go to the end of the slums and meet up with Torn. We join the Underground, which is a secret organization going against the Baron's regime, after doing some odd jobs for Torn, including infiltrating the fortress mere days, I guess, after escaping it to blow up one of the eco ammo dumps. We're then sent on a very risky mission where the Crimson Guards come fighting after us for shipping a shipment of illegal dark eco to the crime boss, who then introduces us to Sig, quickly after giving us one of our first weapons, the Scattergun mod. We do a bunch of odd jobs for Crew, and then we meet this mysterious, or maybe not so mysterious, woman who works at the garage, who's just Kira. It's so obvious at that point that, we're just going to call her Kira for simplicity. So we finally meet Kira. We then meet some new characters, Vin and Ashland, who help us out to getting into the palace, where we fight Praxis. Praxis escapes near miss, but not after finding out that the Metalhead leader and the Baron are working together, but the Baron has a secret plan to overthrow the Metalheads. We meet Ernan and Pekka, and we go on a bunch of quests in the glorious, beautiful, picturesque mountain temple to grab 3 precursor artifacts. We then find out a shocking revelation. We find the decayed old Samos's hut at the end of Dead Town, just outside the city's wall. This is Jak's world. It's the future. We then meet the Shadow, who appears to be Samos. This is all getting a bit confusing now, but shortly after we get the jet board to take home, and we can ride all around the city at will. It's so epic. We've even unlocked sections of the city at this point, which are perfect for grinding. We protect the kid from Praxis. We take him back to core. We win some more races. Collect some Martial and Precursor artifacts, not without a fight. We go back to the Mountain Temple, open a secret door, or not so secret Precursor door, and we end up finding the location of Mars 2. And then we go through this excellent set of platforming levels called the Tests of Manhood, and we even get to play as Dexter, which is pretty sweet. And after these classic levels, we have a second Baron fight, which is such a cool fight. We rescue the friends. Then rescue our friends from the fortress, going to the fortress for the last time. Give young Samos his sage powers via the life seed, which older Samos hid away in the hut. After rescuing the friends from the fortress, it is revealed that the other Samos is a young Samos, and they are time twins. That is interesting. What is going on? We beat Errol in a city race, which is so annoying. We win the first class race, and Errol reluctantly loses, and yeah, he just straight up dies. Well, maybe. We then sent the Crimson Guards are then sent after us after a confrontation with the Baron. Pretty heated confrontation, mind you. We infiltrate the palace and the weapons factory. After infiltrating the palace, Ashlyn agrees to help us, and we end up killing Crew for trying to betray the city. We save Sig after Crew sent him on a suicide mission. He ended up letting the Metalheads into the city. We protect Samos and Kira against the Metalheads, and they take the Rift Rider to the Metalhead nest. We go to the construction site where it is revealed that Core is actually the Metalhead leader. Baron tries to stand up to Core, and then Core ends up killing the Baron. Just before Vin dies. We go to the Metalhead nest, and we end up killing Core. Young Samos and young Jack go back to, the young kid is in an awesome epic twist, my favorite twist of the game. The young boy is actually a young Jack, and Core needs the young boy to open the Precursor Stone, which is an artifact we've gotten at this point that the Baron hid away after getting it from the tomb. And we fight. The Precursor Stone is a Precursor egg, which has a Precursor entity inside, and the young Jack can open it because he's got a gift that the older Jack no longer has, because he's been tainted with the dark ego. Young Jack and young Samos go back to the past to have young Jack grow up and complete the time loop to come back and save the world today. They all party, they all celebrate. Samos says some ominous stuff like, "We might meet Mars someday. He may be closer than you think," and then the game ends. Adventure awaits. There's a bunch of side missions to do, which are interesting. There's about like 30 Precursor orbs that are collecting missions. You just go for egg hunts, and then there's like 52 of them that are racing related. There are like 30 something that are, or maybe it's like 16 that are related to weapons, and there's 3 for a mini game, like a button mashing mini game, and I think the rest you just have to find. And it's an interesting little, for the time it's not bad, you know, again putting this in the context of 2003, right, but it's a little dull, like but to be fair, I think Jak III takes the cake in the amount of side missions that they have. But then again, Jak III also adds a lot of interesting, diverse content, like enemy swarm missions and almost arena-like, right? And then you got like, why am I talking about Jak III? 2004, Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin end up leaving Naughty Dog. Rubin gives a controversial speech at the DICE Summit criticizing publishers for not recognizing and promoting talent responsible for creating games over promoting celebrities. They had nothing to do with the video games. It's a pretty controversial thing, but it's very interesting. He also talks about creative video game rights and whether video games should be seen as an art form or not. We won't go too much into this one because it's not necessarily related to Jak II, but I would like to go over this in a different video.
In 2004, I have not played Jak.
Like, I've watched my nephews play it.
Oh, it does look good.
This looks about the same.
No. It looks a lot better.
Jak's feel is still great, though. He moves really well.
Oh, you remember how to play. It's immediate. He knows all the commands still. All the memories come back.
PS3 remaster was well received. Adding trophies to the game was amazing. I think even if you had a 3D TV, the 3D features are pretty noted as pretty decent, as I've read on Reddit, especially when you go to the palace and things like that. And you know, I've tested it for like all of a couple of hours, and it was pretty sweet if you put it on like 75% rather than the depth to 100. Anyway, moving forward from all that, there is definitely notable drawbacks to the PS3 version, which is a punch glitch, which is caused by a floating point error, I think, where the direction of Jak's punch will actually go in a different direction than when you intended it to, just every now and then. And a couple of exploits that, you know, speedrunners use have been patched, which isn't bad, right? But it's I guess it's bad for them, so it makes speedrunning that glitch mainly, but that also makes speedrunning a little unviable in this version of the game.
I'm only here because you wouldn't last a second without me. Three! Count 'em, 3 adventures!
But again, that was a first. Most characters, and still there are games where the characters go in the water and they just walk through the water. Jak had a reaction for everything.
Yeah, his animation was pretty unparalleled.
And that was something that was very important to us, was that passion for animation and very responsive controls. We all came from the arcade era, and those had a great feel to them, and we wanted to replicate that. Little micro bits of adjustment to get the timing right, to get the motion to work, to get the parabola, the arc of that, when you do your second jump, when you ledge grab, when does he come out of it. And you also build on shoulders of giants. You know, we looked a lot at the best in class at the time, and Mario was doing some, and continues to do some fantastic stuff.
Technically, this was a much more challenging project, and so just getting it to run at all was almost a miracle.
Yeah, I mean, we were really excited about the opportunity to bring Jak and Daxter to PlayStation 3 and be able to present it in high definition and up-res the graphics and add the trophies and sort of really give it that PS3 experience. But it was going to be a very daunting challenge.
Naughty Dog will probably tell you, they told us at the beginning that this is an impossible project. And it wasn't long before we agreed with them.
Jak had one of the craziest overall technical schemes like ever.
They did a lot of tricks, a lot of expected ones and a lot of unexpected ones. They wanted to get the most out of the PS2. Well, actually I would argue they did get the most out of the PS2.
We had like completely custom tools and completely custom way of using all the hardware. Made stuff back and forth between all the different processors and like did weird stuff on the old PlayStation 1 processor you weren't supposed to, and it was just a very complicated design.
So the process of handing it off to another developer, Mass Media, who did a fantastic job of piecing together that spaghetti.
And looking under the hood, yes, it was a surprise to see that much code.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me just say that to them right now.
Lots of late night debugging sessions and mysteries that took a few days to solve.
Yeah, we didn't think when we were making the game of the people that would come through and improve the game.
I was there sitting next to the programmer helping him figure out what kind of clever algorithm that Naughty Dog came up with. Of course, it's at those points you realize how much work you're going to be in for, and you've got to try and figure out how they did this multi-texture layered rendering. Oh, brilliant, but troublesome. We could have gone the route of doing a lot more rewriting than we did, but we didn't want to do that because we wanted to keep the essence of the game, wanted to make sure it was the game. I'd say 100% we are faithful to the original. And like restoring old film, the people that do that, they have, they're driven, they have a cause, and they're trying to make the best job possible because it's a labor of love. And so when you see classics like this, you absolutely want to bring it into the modern era. You want new people to see it, and you've got to take care.
Absolutely. It's like, remixing the Beatles album or something. I mean, it's cool. It's just totally awesome because we all loved this game. I loved it when it came out.
I mean, you remember the game, it always looked great, and it was always super colorful and cool. You play the PlayStation for a while and go back to it, it's like, wow, that's a little different than I remembered it. So it's funny how your memories work on there. I think to some certain extent, you kind of remaster your memories.
And the people that played it 10 years ago are going to be the people that are going to buy this and just like, wow, this is cool. But there is a whole nother generation, or at this point, I feel like I'm so old, it's maybe a few generations back that are going to be looking at this stuff for the first time and thinking, well, this is the kind of game that people don't hardly make anymore. I mean, these days it's big movie kind of adventure titles or big battle games or whatever, and this was a time when it really was all about platform games and that kind of gameplay, puzzle solving that was very simplistic but compelling.
And that actually means a lot to me, that people still want to play this game, So that's pretty refreshing to see that, right on, the game we made 10 years ago is still being played right now. So that's actually really, really cool.
We work so hard on these games, and at the time that they come out, I mean, they're state of the art. I mean, they're just, people are just clamoring that day one, this is it. This is the state of the industry right here. But then they have a tendency to fade. You have people's memories and they talk about it, but they don't really get a chance to really go back and play them.
And that's something that is difficult with video games, because it's often tied to a hardware. That once that hardware is obsolete, then that game dies with it. And so to be able to kind of keep that going forever is definitely something that I wish we could just keep doing, and I think we'll always go back to those classic games. There's always going to be a time in our life, and there was a time in our gaming life, I guess, that we will never forget, and there's a period of time that just has a certain nostalgia to it that we will always kind of go back to. So.
Oh, Jesus, I suck. I suck. It's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to sitting down, and I get permission every once in a while to just do some game time at home. And this, I'm sure I'll get some permission to dive right in. I want to play these again from start to finish, which is kind of ridiculous, but that's what I'm going to do.
The only thing that'll be difficult, I think, for some people is, for all the cleaning up that they do and the graphics and all that sort of stuff, all the stuff that drove us crazy when we released the game is still going to be there. Like all the stuff that we didn't get to do, all the animations that we kind of had to skimp on because we were rushing to get things done. I mean, all that stuff's still going to be there. So, like they say, projects are never finished. They're simply abandoned because you got to ship the damn thing, right? So there'll be a few things that you're like, oh man, but. And the bottom line is, it's going to be cool to be able to experience that stuff again.
There's a pain in creation in the game industry. And there's a lot of late nights, a lot of frustration. Things get to yells, things get to anger. There's a lot of pain in the creation of these games. And to turn around and play it for fun right after that is impossible because the pain still rises. You still get frustrated. Oh, I lost that battle. Oh, we never fixed this thing. Oh, it still has this problem. Oh, how did we leave that in? You don't see it as a gamer sees it. You see it as a game maker sees it.
We create the games that we want to play, but they end up being for somebody else.
You know, it's just making games is just a lot of like personal investment. It's like, and it's kind of like what we're also asking people to do here. It's like you're gonna spend a lot of time at the office. You're gonna just give it a lot of yourself just to do it. And singing now, it's still like, they are great games. You're like, it was worth it. It was totally worth it.
The memory editing and researchers investigating errors of Jak II was definitely some of my favorites. There have been some interesting discoveries. Even today, you know, there's still more being found. I think recently Luminar found unused verbal guard animations in the games using OpenGo. And that's the thing. Now that OpenGo is a thing and the code's been decompiled, it's only going to get easier to, you know, in theory, it's only going to get easier to discover more things, and that's what's great about these games. They're so layered, and there's so much to it that even just like referencing some missing maps with some leftover maps from the PS3 version allowed Luminar to get 7 levels, I believe it was, from the PS2 game, and the PS2 game just loaded them in, right? And so, you know, that's in layman's terms, but it's a very interesting technique for one, but it's also a very interesting game engine and game itself. Even an early version of Spargus from Jak III was left over, right? So, and a big desert level, which I assume is a test for Jak III in some way.
I swear, that's the last time I ever touch any stupid precursor crap! So there we were. Weapons bristling under rumbling hoods.
You talking to me?
Yeah, you talking to him?
I've got you now. Hang on, Dax. It's gonna be close.
Jak and I are world famous!
For the players.
So y'all know me, y'all know I'm a positive Nancy Nunu, y'all know that I try to give things the benefit of the doubt. I try to, like, you know, fucking try not to get angry. I hate angry people. The internet's too angry. There's too many angry people everywhere on the internet that I don't like. And I wanted to do a report of Jak II, 3, and X. I wanted to take them and say, okay, they tried it. I know these are really hard games to do. I know you had 7 months. If you couldn't sort this shit out in 7 fucking months, then how the fuck, the minute you release it, you can magically sort it out? I think they knew that this was going to be this bad, and they were fucking, they just decided to quietly cancel it and not release it. But then a lot of people were asking for it and wanting it, and they're like, oh, well, let's get a payday out of it. And let's release shit! Right, so enough of Jak II. Jak II was fucking unplayable. Don't fucking touch it. If you haven't bought it yet, lucky you. If you're gonna buy it still after me saying all this shit, then just be prepared. And this chair is a noisy piece of shit.
2017, Sony announced that they're going to re-release Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy, Jak II, Jak III, and Jak X for the PlayStation 4 system, noting that Jak X is the first time it has been taken from PS2 and put on another system. These are the native PS2 versions, are just simulations. But what's notable about this release is the Jak games were quite buggy on the emulator. Jak 1 was fine, but Jak 2, 3, and X all had issues. Jak X at one point in the PAL region, my region, had no wheels, which was very interesting. Try to run a race like this. But anyways, yeah, Jak 2 had many issues, slowdowns, frame rate drops, in PAL especially. No water texture. We definitely got the worst deal over here. but both regions had issues. I think the NSTC version had cutscene slowdowns. But, you know, these got patched out eventually, especially around the time of the limited run games re-release for the game. As I think Sony requires the game to be in a certain state before the game is printed. I believe that's why that happened, but I'm not 100%. Yeah, but, you know, they're mainly fixed now, and they're serviceable ports. The main issues nowadays is that, you know, there's still a couple of quirks, like Jak will snap out of an animation in a clip a bit randomly, like just an idle animation, so it's really obvious. And some other things such as water shadows not really working properly, and the main issue is you only have 8 directions for direction input, whereas every other version has 16. So if you go and play like any other version of the game, you'll notice quite quickly that it doesn't feel right.
Hello, good morning, it's me, Mr. Angry Dude. There's a patch for Jak II, and it didn't fix it in PAL regions, because I've heard in NTSC regions the game is fucking fine, so lucky you. No, they're gonna fix it though. But they patched it. Patch does nothing but fix the water, as far as I can see. The water actually looks normal now, so that's good. I haven't checked anything else really properly, but from what I've seen, the water's fixed, so that's a quick update. They're fixing it, they're patching it, so that's good.
As you may have seen in my previous video, where I have played Jak II for about 2 hours, the PAL release of the game has gotten an update to 1.02. And in this video, I'd like to compile my thoughts about the update. So let's get started. When I first booted up the game, I immediately noticed that they fixed the 16.7% slowdown that was there in the previous version of the game. I'm glad they finally addressed this issue. To me, the game was unplayable in its previous state. It wasn't just me who noticed this though. My Twitch chat found it to be a lot more enjoyable as well. If you're from an NTSC region and you're wondering what I'm talking about, your release never had this issue to begin with. This is a PAL exclusive bug. Another thing I have noticed, that they didn't change the camera controls back. I saw a lot of pictures of people talking to Portable Kingpin, asking if there could be an inversion of the camera controls again. So I thought this is something worth mentioning as well. Now, I'm not gonna go over everything that hasn't been changed, since I probably wouldn't be done talking by tomorrow. Now that I have a better idea of how well the game runs, I'd easily put it on par with Jak III. If I had to make a tier list for the Jak games on PS4, I'd rank them the following: S tier, Jak I; A tier, Jak X; B tier, Jak II and 3. There is still a lot of lag going on in Jak II, even with that update we got. And when there's a 1.02 patch, there must have been a 1.01. And with that, you're very correct. I haven't noticed any big differences between 1.00 and 1.01, besides the water textures being fixed. If you're looking into buying the bundle and you plan on doing a casual playthrough, I'd say go for it. It's really nice to see the game in 1080p with what they call 60 FPS where possible. Now, if you're interested in speedrunning the games, the PAL patch to 1.02 certainly fixed Jak II, but I'd like to think that the tier list I made earlier still holds up for speedrunning as well. It's possible to run them now, but I wouldn't recommend it. Wait for some more patches and we should be good to go for Jak II and 3 as well. That being said, I'll post more update videos and patch reviews in the future, so if you're interested in those, consider subscribing to my channel. My name is Boomer, and as always, thanks for watching.
In early 2018, cheat mode was discovered in all 3 of the mainline Jak and Daxter games, this originally being dubbed as quote-unquote debug mode, before the discovery of the real debug mode, or rather the debug menu, was later discovered in 2019. Cheat mode allowed for many amazing discoveries. A new speedrun category was created allowing for the use of cheat mode, many getting the platinum in less than 30 seconds, with the current record being 0 minutes and 8 seconds on the PS3 version. This was achieved by HS Blue from Australia. about 4 months ago. Alongside this, the Platinum Trophy in the PS3, PS Vita, and PS4 versions of titles besides Jak X were now completely obtainable by cheating. Such as the Titan suit in Jak II, or the Bomb Bot in Jak III. The discovery of debug mode was something else entirely, however. An entire menu, which allows all sorts of manipulations. This was used by the developers when testing and developing the game. Limited run games. Later in 2018, I woke up one day to what felt like an extraordinary day. Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy was getting re-released physically on the PlayStation 4 system, in the form of a limited run game standard and collector's editions. This was quite a surprise. I personally didn't actually believe it at first. I thought it was an internet joke. But then I found out what limited run games was that day. I personally missed out on this, but was able to pick one up in 2019 when they announced a few more copies were being printed. Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, Jak II, and Jak III, and Jak X all received this treatment, which I currently own all of them today. Which is quite a treat. Most exciting were some of the items that came with these editions. Each of the CE had a pretty similar format, and they all kind of followed this: a foil-stamped collector's edition box, a design Bible, book, a design Bible book compiled with with clippings from the original design production binders, a physical CD soundtrack, a collectible card set, deck set, a poster, a collectible memory card, 16GB USB flash drive, a 3-inch metal piece of memorabilia, and a PS4 printed copy of the game. Alongside this, we got PS4 themes of each of the games, including this particularly cool one for Jak II. Jak and really gave our characters personality. Jak didn't actually really have a personality until this game, so this game is really fond. I've got really fond memories of this game. So again, let's just take a quick look at the back again. It's off the parcel now. That's the whole thing. Nice cardboard. I'm not sure what I'm doing with them, but I have to keep them because, what else can I do? There we go, that's working. Okay, so this is the box itself. We can get a close-up on that, please. So the box itself, it's got a nice Jak II logo indented into it. Really nice. I actually just kind of want to keep that there and stop the unboxing here, to be honest. It looks so good. Anyway, let's do this. Let's look at the side. So the side's got Jak II, the seal of Ma, and Naughty Dog's logo. Yeah, I've refrained from looking at this on the internet myself, but I really like what I see. We have the game itself. Now I received the cover I didn't really want. I can swap it out, but I don't know. I might keep it. I don't really know yet. I like the fact that the back cover is purple as well, though, instead of blue, along with the Japanese cover right here, and it's pretty. And the reversible cover up that I'll probably swap out. Release soundtrack for Jak II. There's 3 discs because there was so much content in terms of unused content and things like that. So let's have a look here. So we've got the main themes on disc 1. Disc 2 continues the main themes and then ends the main themes with Baron Battle, track 7, and track 8 is E3 demo. And then the rest of them have a bunch of demo tracks, and we've probably heard a lot of those. And we've got unused underscores for cutscenes. And on on disc 3, which is actually a soundtrack by Larry Hopkins, a different person. We have a bunch of soundtrack themes, actually. That's what they are. There is other merchandise, of course. Gaming Kids figurines came out a bit earlier. There's the Jak III one came out after this. And there are some Jak II figurines that came out from Toys R Us, and more recently PlayStation released their own little, like, 3-inch figurines for Jak, and Jak II specifically, the Jak II design. Yeah, so there's a bit of merchandise. Open Goal is a very great. That's where we're at today. That's where we're at today. We've got to revitalize the life of Jak and Dexter with Open Goal, and it's only a matter of time before Jak 2 is done, and then they move on to Jak 3. You know, once Jak 2 is done, modding the game will be more accessible. I'd argue even just accessible in general, or it wasn't before. Texture swapping, which I've seen people do in emulation, but you know, it'll be way easier with this system. It's where we're at now, and all the quality of life settings and quality of life additions just in the base game, without even modding it, is something to cherish and behold for years to come. And the fact that it has Steam Deck compatibility and that sort of thing, this is going to be the way to play it. None of those glitches that occur on the PS4 and PS3 versions there. The speedrunning scene's pretty cool. As I said, you know, there's a few people that hold the title today, but you know, some other influential names are the Vrixer, who has held a lot of titles in all the games, I understand. HS Blue, more recently, I've watched a lot of their content, and Boomer streams. These three, I think, are quite notable in the speedrunning community. I guess there's Outrageous Josh as well, who I think is quite a notable figure. I used to be into watching them, but you know, not necessarily nowadays. I'm not caught up, but some interesting tech was definitely involved. You know, the hoverboard hover glitch, which is pretty intricate. The boosted uppercut, which I love doing nowadays. And I even had to go at like testing my skills at a speedrun. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. Like my skills aren't my skills aren't that good, but the speedrun tech is insane. Like let me demonstrate here how you can actually skip the first 60% of the video game in a playthrough. I now appreciate that Naughty Dog was trying to create something novel here. A highly engaging, action-packed, explosive, impressive war story, albeit through the lens of a buddy road trip movie. Maybe a bit too much of that at times, but you know, it was definitely interesting for its time. But try and tell me this game doesn't slap. I can also see what Ruben Fletcher is talking about with the Jak road trip buddy movie vibe nowadays. After he said that, it has sort of clicked with me that it's kind of the tone of the game. I also appreciate that Naughty Dog impressively pushed the boundaries for a game intended for most age demographics. I thank Jak II for a lot of my engaged creativity. A lot of what I've created, I have Jak II to thank for. I know without Jak II, a lot of what I've created would have been something else entirely. I know hindsight is 20/20 here, but I think I am insanely lucky to have been born at the right time for this game. I have been working on my own impressive war story game for quite some time now, and have been doing so since I started creating games, which is when I was about 9 when I picked up Game Maker 8. I remember showing this project as a work in progress, of course, in my last computer science class at high school. One of my friends said to me, "How did you come up with this when you were 9?" in disbelief that I was actually working on it at the time. My teacher kind of turned around and said, "Hey, yeah, it was..." And I chuckled, I just said Jak II. But it was true. Furthermore, I haven't completed all these other projects yet, but Jak II has been at the forefront of my creative exploits throughout different projects and odd jobs here and there. So Jak II, 20 years later. It is in a very interesting place. A remake is possible, a movie of its plot is apparently likely, but Jak II is really only now getting caught up to technically, on a technical level, such as Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart or God of War PS4. Interestingly noted by Mark Cerny in PlayStation's PlayStation 5 Technical Breakdown event in 2020, is how Jak II was one of the first games to load levels so quickly using, what they would use now as the SSD, but they had to hide the levels with a bunch of curves and curved walls, which now no longer have to do, thanks to the PlayStation 5's SSD. These concessions don't have to be made.
The first time I played this game, I was 5 or 6 years old, and I played it with my whole family, sitting on the couch and playing this hard game. And I remember that game was very difficult as a kid, and not so difficult as today. Yeah, what I like most about the game is the dark and serious tone that, despite the humor, still take it seriously. Even the bad guys like Baron Praxis get a backstory and make the character seem a little grayer. And so it's not just good against evil. Also, new side characters have their own backstories, which are also very tragic. But you also have funny and cool moments with them. Even characters that you only see briefly have their special characteristics, which simply makes the whole game seem more alive. What I like about Haven City is that it's very diverse. Each district had its own character and story to tell, but I also like the mix of future and old technology, almost like science fiction in the Middle Ages.
What is there to say about Jak II Renegade which hasn't been said already? People may say Jak and Daxter the Precursor legacy is the best, while other members of the Jak and Daxter community declare that Jak II Renegade or Jak III reigns supreme. To be honest, despite I'm a platformer connoisseur, I consider Jak X Combat Racing arguably holds up much better than the Jak and Daxter trilogy. I'm not saying that they're bad, I'm saying that there are some aspects that I didn't enjoy, especially when the controls are clunky and there is absolutely no strafing. Guns and strafing go hand in hand, so I don't understand the absence of said strafing. Anyway, enough about the Jak and Daxter trilogy. Let's focus on Jak II Renegade. Looking back, now that I think about it, Jak II Renegade almost have the same story as Samurai Jak, what with the main character being transported to the future, albeit both the samurai and Jak travel to the future through different means. Except that, unlike Samurai Jak, Jak decides to stay in the future. What they have in common, besides them sharing the same name, is that they both experience nitty-gritty, dark, dystopian futures. It's a coincidence because Phil Lamar, who is Samurai Jak's voice actor, voiced Sig from Jak II Renegade, Jak III, and Jak X Combat Racing. I finally met him in person at MCM Comic Con Manchester 2018. I even squealed like a fangirl when he acknowledged me and noticed my Ratchet & Clank cosplay while he spotted me in the crowd. Speaking of Ratchet & Clank, one of the highlights of Jak II Renegade is suddenly seeing a billboard or poster of Ratchet & Clank in the deeper parts of Haven City. I really miss the good old days when Insomniac Games and Naughty Dog used to promote each other's games by including their main mascots in each other's games. Racing is always my forte, which makes sense why I prefer Jak X Combat Racing. Despite that, I'm not a speedrunner. Of course, I'd enjoyed the arena races, including the race against Hero. I was also captivated by how elaborate the story is, in spite of the dark undertones. I can always count on Daxter to lighten up the mood with his hilarious antics. Similar to Spiral 3 Year of the Dragon, I didn't enjoy hoverboarding.
The most mind-blowing part playing Jak II as a child is when we finally found out that we're still in Sandover Village territories, just in a different time frame. Because that adds so many layers of lore and exploration into the Jak and Daxter world after the player was given the impression that we're in a whole different world because of how different it looks after going into the rift and out of it. And then the player being introduced to young Samos right after, which just gives the player so many more questions to ask. Why does he not remember us? Why does he look like this? What's this big ball on his head? Does he really think Daxter is ugly? What happened to the inhabitants of Sandover Village? Is this why we don't see the sages anymore? Lots and lots of questions that we can definitely explore in Jak IV. Naughty Dog.